Good morning, viewers. Today we are looking at a very interesting topic, one that is very interesting in these times of COVID, where people are in lockdown of some kind. And to help me discuss this topic of addictions, I have to my left Reverend Njeru Wachira, who is a counseling psychologist. Karibu sana.
Thank you for having me.
Karibu. And I have Apollo Kariuki on my right, who's a youth pastor at PCA St. Andrews. Karibu sana. My name is Kevin Muriithi, and I serve in the youth ministry here in PCA Loresho Community Church. Now we are looking at this topic of addiction, and I know many people have raised this concern, Bwana Apollo, especially young people. Here we have a lot of time, and you know we are struggling with particular habits and particular addictions. In your line of work, what have you seen as some examples of addictions or addictive behaviors as you have continued to work as a youth pastor?
Well, I think I can put them into three categories. The first one is substance abuse, alcohol, narcotics, or what people call controlled drugs. And I think this is huge. This is one of the areas that I think many young people are battling with. Category number two is sexual activity. We can talk about pornography, masturbation, and sex. And finally, which is very interesting to me this time, is gambling. And I'm trying to think, many people are talking about gambling during the sporting activities, which has been halted. So my question is, how has this pandemic helped the situation? Are there people who will stop gambling altogether? Or what will happen? It's quite interesting because it's not going on. You know, the sporting activities are not going on. So I don't think there is much gambling going on. So in my opinion, those are the three categories of addictions that I can talk about.
Very interesting. And you know, you talk about gambling, and sometimes young people will say it is kind of it's an investment I am making, right? I have a little money and I want to invest it so I can have a little bit more. Or on the example of alcohol, I've gotten a breakup from a girlfriend or boyfriend. I am just going to relax so that I can forget about them. So Chugat, I don't know how you could help us with understanding this question of addiction. At what point is it addiction? What is an addiction in the first place?
Thank you very much. First, I want to define what addiction is. Addiction is a condition where a person engages in severe use of drugs or substances or excessive behavior that is detrimental to them, which has negative effects. And we have different kinds of addictions. In case of drugs or substances, we have alcohol, we have hallucinogens, stimulants, the substances that people abuse or they use. But also we have other people who have behavioral addictions, things like what the youth pastor mentioned, sex, gambling, pornography. You are to an activity which has negative effects to you as a person, but you are not willing to live it. And we have had people who have even had serious effects on them, on addictions. And according to the DSM-5, which is a diagnostic statistical manual for mental disorders, each of these substances is classified as its own addiction. So you look at alcohol as alcohol addiction, and you look at tobacco as tobacco addiction. And so that's kind of getting hooked into something that you're not able to come out of. That is what I would call addiction. Yes.
Wow, and you know, one of the questions I think that arises from this, perhaps for someone who may be watching,
yes,
is how can one know if they are addicted? Because perhaps I'm just having fun, I'm just experimenting.
Yes.
Is there a line? What would you say?
Yeah, one would know they're addicted. Actually, as a psychologist, we rely so much on the DSM-5, and it has a diagnostic criteria that tells you how you can know you're addicted, how can tell a person is addicted. And one of it is that if you have a behavior or you engage in something which you're not able to live when you want to live, that's an addiction. when you have what you call tolerance. Tolerance is where you have to use more of that substance to say have the same thrill or feeling. When you find yourself you're getting had to use more than you're supposed to use, you had used before to get the same feeling, that is like an addiction. Sometimes when people who are addicted have what we call withdrawal symptoms. And withdrawal is when you have psychological or physical symptoms that are related to substance use. When you find that you have seizures, hallucinations after engaging in some substance use, that's most likely an addiction. Then we have people who abandon the things they like to do for something different. You know, you find yourself you no longer have time for that thing that you're supposed to do. That's an addiction. And there are several, and also we have people who also abandon their main roles. You cannot function properly, you cannot do your homework, you can't do your duties at work. And this also leads to conflicts. You find you have interpersonal conflicts with your parents, or you have conflict with your employer. That's most likely an addiction. And addiction is rated from mild, moderate to severe, depending on the number of the diagnostic criteria that you exhibit. So through that you can know I'm actually hooked into something and I'm not able to come out of it.
Is it a preserve of the young people? Is it only the young people who are addicted?
No, not a preserve of the young people, because actually most people are addicted to things that they don't think they are addicted to. Because if you cannot sleep because you have to use a Piriton, that's an addiction. If you get a headache because you can't use coffee, that's an addiction. We have people now, even older people, who are addicted to internet. And you keep on your phone, and that's an addiction. So it's not just young people, it's cut across the board that anybody can get addicted. Yes.
I think that's very helpful, and I'm sure, Apollo, perhaps you've also seen this in your work with the young people. And there are some people who say, but you know, I can play safe, right? So as a young person, I want to perhaps engage in some activities, or I am engaging in some activities. And in my mind, I think I am in control. Have you seen that, or what?
But
what
I think that is very
that?
common, because as I tell many young people, sometimes they become false prophets unto themselves.
Yeah.
When they think that whatever they are doing, they are in control of it, they are safe. And I like to imagine the boundary between playing safe and doing something is quite thin. So crossing over is quite fast, and perhaps you don't even notice you have crossed over. And I think it's deceptive for one to think that they are playing safe, because perhaps psychologists perhaps agree with me when I say addiction is not something you decide. That's not send a friend request with you on Facebook. No, it's something that you get yourself into.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think many people don't understand that you can't play safe for long, because you not know. Because you think you're in control, then you discover you aren't. You already have a problem. And sometimes I imagine it like getting into a house and then you get locked from the outside, and you can't open from the inside. So you need somebody to open, from the outside. So when you get in and the door locks itself automatically, and so you are there, you discover, wow, I need to get out, I need help. Yes.
You need help, and we are going to be thinking through some practical steps and even some biblical wisdom for those perhaps who feel they are locked in this house and they need help from outside. But it's very interesting, Apollo, you've helped us to see that it is like a slippery slope, right? So you begin up there, but slowly by slowly, you find yourself in this activity. So our psychologists, just one more question before we look at the practical side of it is this: I've heard some people say that addictions are also behaviors or responses to things that are going on inside of us. In other words, when I am addicted to alcohol or sex or pornography, there are some underlying issues. What are some of those underlying issues that cause people to look for solutions, so to speak, in these things?
To understand the underlying issues, we look at the biopsychosocial model, which tries to explain why people are addicted. And biopsychosocial simply represents 3 domains: biological, psychological, and social. Biologically, there are people who are genetically predisposed to getting addicted. And you look at the family history, you find that there is a history of addiction in the family. And that should send a very clear signal to people, because you don't know how predisposed you are to getting addicted. And this explains why some people are more likely to get addicted to a substance more than others. So that is genetically predisposition. Then you look at the psychological part of it. There are people who have issues, say mental disorders, that will also be risk factors. Say things like post-stress, post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, and also stress, because whenever you're stressed, you are likely to find something that will help you relax. And most likely people will go to alcohol or something that will help you relax. Those are psychological issues. But again, we also have other environmental factors. Things like peer pressure. You know, you want to fit in a group, and for you to fit in, you have to do what they do. You have to go with the tide. We have things like the exposure. There are children who are exposed to substances at an early age, and they are more likely to get addicted, and especially when it's available in the community. And when parents are doing it, you find that there is a tendency of the children picking up the behavior from their parents. And I think those are some of the environmental factors that can make one get addicted.
Wow, very, very complex factors that serve to help us to understand this topic of addiction. And we're seeing there are biological issues, psychological issues, and social issues. Very interesting points. And I think one may feel, wow, then this seems like a big animal. How do I get myself out of this? And I think we could conclude with some biblical reflections or pastoral reflections. But before that, Mchungaji, our psychologist, what would you say are some practical steps that people could take if they are addicted?
First and foremost, we need to understand that addiction is a disease. It's a mental disease. He actually brought a very good illustration where a person is locked in the house from the outside. And it's only someone who is on the outside who can be able to open for them. And you find that most people who are addicted don't realize they're addicted. Most of them are in denial. And so the first thing is to help this person understand they're in a problem. And that calls for intervention. Intervention from friends, family, colleagues at work. If you see someone who is in addiction, you need to do something about it. You need to have an honest sitting with this person and help them understand that they need to look for help. That is the first step. If someone is ready to get help, we have professionals who are ready to help. It's good to seek professional help, where a person will get psychosocial support from psychologists or a psychiatrist if the case has gone beyond. And one of the things that they do, one, they might recommend what we call rehabilitation, which is very good because a person is able to be helped medically, where they're given drugs to address their withdrawal syndromes, and also to help them to cope with their situation. And also, they also get what we call individual or group therapy in that kind of a setting. So as people, as colleagues, as family, we need to help people who are in addiction. Some of them may not be able to help themselves. Remember, one of the things they go through is that they want to come out sometimes, but they cannot be able to come out. So we need to be there to help them and snatch them from the fire by talking to them and directing them to where they can get professional help. Yeah.
What if there's a situation where someone doesn't want to be helped, or they clearly have an issue, but then perhaps they're wrestling?
Yeah, there's also a informed consent because you can't force someone. But I've seen people even taking steps to get someone admitted to a hospital. I know legally that may be wrong, but it's very important to show love and to help the person understand that is you are working to their best interest, and also help them to see the adverse effects that substances have to them. So it's good for those who can identify to have a collaborative approach. Get the pastor, get their friends, get the food they respond to, and help this person be able to understand that you are working to their best interest.
So their assistance is an expression of love. Now, I think this is a very rich conversation that has helped us to understand the issue of addiction from a psychological perspective, and I think these are helpful insights for those of us who are watching.
Correct.
Now, I know all of us work in the church, and I have seen that some people have also talked about addiction having a spiritual side to it, perhaps a theological side to it. Apollo, maybe you could help us think through, is there a biblical view towards addiction, or some biblical principles, or things like those?
Well, thank you for that. I think I would approach this issue in 3 ways. The first one is pleasure. When people are doing all those things you have mentioned here, they are looking for something. And perhaps we can conclude they are looking for a certain happiness, a certain pleasure, a certain joy. But the truth is that when they do those things, they are not looking for addictions. They are looking for pleasure. And looking at the Bible, I think the Bible promises something better. Because most of these things you have actually all of those things you have mentioned, you have to go and they are external, they are without. You have to go look for them so that when you do them, you feel good. But I think the Bible promises something that is internal. And the verse that comes into mind, for instance, is Psalm 16, verse 11. It says, in the presence of the Lord, there is fullness of joy. And when I talk about the presence of God, many people think of coming before God in song and music and worship. But I'm thinking of presence of God in someone's life. You know, Emmanuel, God with us, like in yourself. So there's something that is springing from within. So you don't have to go look for it from the outside. And that's why I think Isaiah says, come buy without money. So you don't have to go, but it's like something that is flowing from the inside. So, and I think that is something better, something that I would want to have. Then the other one is freedom. Now, many people get engaged into these things because of freedom. It's through excess of freedom that many people get enslaved to addictions. And I can actually put it this way, it's a freedom that enslaves. It's paradoxical because freedom brings release. Yes. But now, this kind of freedom that people exercise, I'm free to do this, I'm free to do that, it's actually a freedom that enslaves. And I think God promises true freedom. Freedom that sets you free. As the Bible says, if the Son of Man sets you free, you are free indeed. And I think the Bible promises freedom, and the freedom is possible. And when we come to God, the other day I was reading a story of someone who was giving their testimony of what they were before they encountered the freedom that Christ gives. They say, I was addicted to sex, and something that many people don't like talking about. And a 27-year-old Asian man, saying, I've been addicted for sexual activities. He talked about drugs. It's like a package. Then he says, Christ has forgiven me. I'm free indeed. And of course, that does not dismiss the issues that has been listed. Then now, lastly, when we talk about God, we talk about help, because God is the giver of help, and humanity is the recipient of that help. There's no way God will need help. So when we see God, we see help, because He is the source of help. And so as human beings, we know that when we need help of any kind, help is available. And I think psychologists would also say that help is available. And I think from where we are seated also, help is available, because God is the giver of help. I think Psalms 46 says that God is a pleasant, I think it's 47 rather, God is a pleasant help in time of, so I see it literally, that whenever I'm in need of help, help is available. And whenever people come to me battling these addictions, even before I refer them to where help is, the first statement is help is available.
Yeah, actually, Kevin, you cannot underrate the power of God, because He came to set the captives free. And whenever we depend on God, He's able to help us through the journey. Remember, man is made to love themselves. They're so selfish. But you can imagine someone putting their lives at risk. Some of the things people do, engaging in unprotected sex just because you're intoxicated. This without minding what is happening. See, this person is in the hands of God of bondage. So the power of prayer is still very, very useful. But as much as we also pray, we also need to help this person, because there's something that is precipitating this issue to happen. And so we need also to give them psychosocial support to work with this person. Some do not have coping skills in terms of when they have crisis or pressures, they cannot cope. And that's why you need a counselor or someone to work with you to help you to develop a coping mechanism. As much as we pray, also work with this person, because it's a journey. You have had people who have gone to rehabs and lapsed, they went back to the same thing again. But what they lack is that social support that will be able to help the person to build their muscles again and be able to say no.
Yeah. I think there's also a dimension which is important for us to mention, especially from the church's perspective, is when people demonize addiction. Because I believe addiction is now something else, it's a sickness. But sometimes we demonize it. And people who battle these addictions are more often than not, excluded, hated, I don't think that is correct. I think it's a sickness, and that's why we need to attend to them as such. So we should not in any way demonize people who are going through those problems. Yeah.
So I think it is an expression to reach out, just like Christ has actually come to seek and save the lost.
Yes.
That our love would compel us to reach out to anyone who needs the help, because as a church we believe that true help comes from God, and that is what we have been saying. And like one writer, also a psychologist, talks about addictions being disordered worship. Disordered worship. So it is that these root issues in our lives, we've made them to be so big that we are focused so much on them and not on the God who can give us the help we need. And so I think you are reminding us also to look to God. Even as we seek the psychosocial support, we are also looking to God, from whom our help comes from. The example I like to give as well is on that these issues in our lives, they are like these small lights. Assuming you walk into this building that's near us, our sanctuary, and you look at those lights in the ceiling, they look bright, and they will even burn your eyes a little bit.
Yeah.
But if you were to walk out like right now, it's about noon, and you look to the sky, the sun is very, very bright. It makes the small lights look less and less.
Correct.
And so sometimes what you are saying is through the psychosocial support that people give us, they are helping us to see, yes, we have issues, we have these things we are struggling with, but there is help. And Father, we are looking to Christ, who is our light, and helping us to see also that in Him we can see clearly, and even we can be able to deal with the circumstances in our lives.
Yeah.
So I think as we draw to a conclusion, any parting shot from us, from you gentlemen?
I think you've rightly said it, and I just remember the case of Naaman, who needed help from the man of God, and he was sent somewhere. I think even when you come to God, will send you somewhere. God will send you to a counselor. God will send you to a pastor. God will send you where help is available. So, and we see help as coming from God, and then God knows where you get that help. So I see it that way, God sending you to where help is available.
Thank you.
Yeah, for me, I would actually say the same thing, that don't suffer alone if you are going through addiction. Help is available. Seek help. And for all of us, as the pastor said, let's not demonize people who are going through addiction. Let's not give up on them. God has not given up on anybody. Because I know their families were struggling with people who are addicted. And some are giving up. Don't give up on them. Continue offering hope and also supporting them and seeking help where help is available. I know there's help in prayer, there's help in psychologists, but also be a friend who will walk with someone along the difficult path.
So if you're there watching us and you feel as if this is something that has spoken to you, please feel free to reach out. You've heard there's a psychologist, there are pastors, and there are many more, even around in your sphere of influence, wherever you may be watching in. There is help. And we wanted to just talk about addictions because we believe that there is always hope and that there is hope in Christ. We hope that this has been a blessing to you, it has spoken to you, and we look forward to interacting with you at another time. Asanteni sana.
God bless you.
God bless you.